What's going on, Colts Nation? I'm Lawrence Owen. This is Colts Law, and today we're going to be talking about the defensive line. And my question is, am I the only one that has the same thoughts on this? No, that's why I got a couple guests with me. I want to welcome Colts loyalist and Lucas Robbins to the stream. Welcome to the stream, guys. Colts loyalists, each of you will give yourselves a little bit of moment to let everybody know a little bit about yourselves. Before we start, we'll start with loyalist here.
I'm just a fan that's been watching you for a few months and stuff, and I reached out to you, and you said you give me a shot to be heard, so here I am.
All right, Lucas.
Well, I'm a freelance writer right now, currently for the Blue Stable. Used to do a few writing for Roster Guy, and have had a few podcasts here or there, but I've semi-retired from podcasting for a little bit, but might as well make some guest appearances right now and see if I get back into it.
Awesome. Make sure the people that are watching currently, make sure that my audio is proper and everybody can be heard. Because sometimes I have a problem with that and I forget to click a certain link or something for audio proper. But before we get into it, I want to let everybody know, remind you, please smash that like button, hit subscribe if you're not subscribed, tag that notification bell. That way you're notified next time I go live. Don't forget, check out the description of this video right down below for obvious reasons. I mean, I have my Patreon. Speaking of Patreon, I want to give a shout out to all of these patrons right here that is listed. Those are the patrons for my Patreon. Once I have 15, I will do live streams for Patreon only. So just let you know. Don't forget, I also have a merch shop, and this is my merch shop. Make sure to check out the Colts Law merch shop. The link is in the description of this video. There are a ton of high quality, reasonably priced items there that you can choose from. And all you got to do is just click one button and you can go and check out all these great merchandise items. Also, there's a link for super chats in the description as well. The reason I put that in there is super chats here on YouTube. YouTube takes 65% of all super chats, if you did not know that. For me, however, if you use the Streamlabs link, you still get to run a super chat, and 94% of that goes straight to me. So just let you know that as well. So if you want to support me with super chats or anything of that nature, that's the better way of going about it. But it's time to actually get into what we're actually talking about here, and that's the Colts defensive line. Huge changes in the defensive line with a couple starters not even on the team anymore. Pass rushers. When you found out that it came to obvious that Autry's not coming back because he signed with the Titans, and then the Colts, Ballard pretty much said we're probably not going to bring Justin Houston back because of the draft. What was your first thoughts? I'm going to start with loyalist. What was your thoughts on when you found out that Houston and Autry will not be back with the Indianapolis Colts?
I was sort of split. At first, I was like, man, that's a lot of sacks to be given up. That's just a lot of production to be given up. But then I also got to thinking, we need to give these guys time. They're going to only get so much from practice. If they don't get out there and get game reps, they're not going to get the experience that they need. Justin Houston is not getting any younger. So if these guys aren't getting the reps, how are we ever going to actually fill the void?
Yep. Lucas?
I was feeling very similar to Loyalist on we need to start getting our younger guys some snaps finally, especially we got Kamoko Toure and Taekwon Lewis both on their last years of their rookie deals. They need to get some sort of like close to starting snaps or starting snaps at some point to prove that they actually are good pass rushers that are long-term in the Colts' plans. And we'll see if they can produce this year. This is their chance. And if not, then they might be looking for new homes in 2022.
When free agency started and the first, 5-6 days passed and I saw Autry sign and Houston hadn't re-signed, I immediately went to the thought of, and I said this on multiple streams, I think Chris Ballard wants to get younger on that defensive line. And once he drafted 2 pass rushers right there in that first and second round of the draft, that kind of confirmed everything. And then he went off and said that himself, and I was like, it's great to actually be right about something once in a while, right? The defensive line, I think, isn't going to take a step back. Charm City, Brandon A says that he thinks the Colts defense will take a huge step back because we're relying on rookies to help out with the pass rush. I believe one rookie, and that's obviously Kwity Paye, and he'll have an entire offseason to work out to get a little bit better. But that other pass rush side, we have pass rushers that's been on the Colts for a few years now. We did get Isaac Rochelle, who is, to me, Isaac Rochelle seems like a Danico Autry signing, right? Back when Ballard grabbed him up. Kind of one of those under-the-radar guys that was producing in the snaps that he was having, but just wasn't getting a whole lot of snaps. Loyalist, do you know much about Isaac Rochelle, and do you have any thoughts on him?
I actually, disclaimer, I'm a huge Notre Dame fan whenever it comes to football. So I'm familiar from his time at Notre Dame. Now, when he went to San Diego / Los Angeles, then, I really wasn't as in touch with what he was doing in his college days. But, man, his motor is just – it fits perfectly with us if it's anything like it was during Notre Dame days.
Lucas?
I think I followed him a little bit during college with Notre Dame, of course, but in the pros, it's been a little bit hit or miss at times with him, mostly because he's had a more limited role at times with the Chargers. 2018 was really his best year, where he had a good 5 sacks, and he had 6 hurries and I think 1 knockdown and 7 quarterback hits. He was pretty good, but at the same time, he isn't quite moving the needle as well as, Justin Houston or Danico Autry. I think he's more of kind of at that almost Al-Quadin Muhammad, but a little bit more upside in terms of pass rush. He does provide decent depth and everything. It's a low risk, medium reward kind of signing where I'm not having crazy expectations on him. However, I do think he'll be a solid contributor for the rotation.
Speaking of rotation, the Colts have 15 defensive linemen on their roster currently. 15. Holy crap, that's a lot, right? When you think it's just one position group, and they have 15 out of 90 some that they're allowed to have this offseason before the cut downs to 53. That's a lot of people, and that tells you that they realize that pass rush is a very, very important part of this defense. When we're looking at that, you realize the Colts probably ain't going to have more than, what would you say, 10 probably at most on the defensive line for their rotation. Lucas, what are your thoughts on how many guys do you think that Chris Ballard and Frank Reich will have on the defensive line when it's time to cut down to 53?
Well, they have tended to go a little bit closer to 9 or 10 at times throughout the last few years. I actually just wrote for the Blue Stable, shameless plug right now, I know, but you know what? I have no shame. I wrote an article about projecting the whole entire 53-man roster and practice squad, and I had a grand total of 9 Colts players on their active roster plus 2 practice squad defensive linemen, and Dio, I should say, does count on those 9, but he will likely be on the PUP, so he won't be on the active roster in week 1, and it'll probably bring up someone like possibly Windsor to the active roster, but yeah, I think 9 is a pretty solid bet for how many defensive linemen they're going to have.
Well, depending upon where they feel he is at, he could either be on the PUP or he could be on IR, and IR doesn't count on the 53 either. Your thoughts on how many people that the Colts will probably have on their 53-man roster on the D line there, Loyalist?
I would say right now, I'm not sure. With the extended schedule, with the extra depth that we also have on the offensive line, so you're going to need more spots available to fill out that battle and stuff. I'm not sure what Ballard. I mean, I honestly feel like the 10 to 9 is, I think he would lean closer to 10 this year because of the extended season and also with the added chances of injury and such.
That's actually a good point that you bring up, that it is an extended season. You do have 18 weeks this year, and obvious a lot of injuries happen on that defensive line from time to time. So, yeah, a good rotation is important. Let's actually get in and start talking player to player on these guys. I want to know what in the world, where you feel they're going to be. Now, obviously, I want to start off with the guys that I feel have a guaranteed spot on the roster. And you can't talk about the defensive line and guaranteed spots on the roster unless you're talking about a guy who's making $21 million a year, right? DeForest Buckner. He is a guy who's taking one roster spot. And there's no question about that. We all agree. If you don't, I'm taking you off right now. You're not on the stream no more. Okay? Loyalist, what are your thoughts about DeForest Buckner with the defensive line?
Well, I'm pretty sure that one's pretty safe. But I'll tell you right now, I mean, with just everything he offers, the leadership in the locker room, the leadership on the field, the way he just opens it up so much for everybody else. I mean, you just want everybody to end up being him. You want Tyquan Lewis when he's done to be DeForest Buckner. Same with all these guys. I mean, he's just perfect, I think.
Lucas?
Yeah, DeForest Buckner is as safe of a bet to make this roster as any player. And the only things that are going to keep him from being on the roster is something happening legally, which I highly doubt is going to happen considering all that we know about his character, injury, which you never know, and an apocalyptic event, which I am no Nostradamus. I'm not going to predict on that front. But he's going to be on the roster. They traded up a lot of assets for him. They're paying him the big bucks, and he has earned every single cent so far. He's staying on the roster. End of discussion.
Now, there's a tie, in my opinion, on the next people that will be on the roster. Obviously, when you spend a first-round pick on a defensive lineman, they're generally going to be on the roster that year, right? And then, of course, the guy that always sits beside DeForest Buckner, our nose tackle or one tech, Grover Stewart, who at times Buckner and Stewart flip positions on the 1 and 3 tech because, they're both pretty good at flipping in between what form of tackle on that D-line they are. Both these guys are solid contributors. I want to talk about Grover Stewart first. He signed an extension, I believe it was the beginning of last year. It was like about $10 million a year or something like that. And I think his spot obviously is set as well. I think he's that starting nose tackle. Big guy, definitely knows how to eat up double teams. And when he's one-on-one, he's scary because for a guy his size, he can accelerate rather quickly. Loyalist, what's your thoughts on Grover Stewart?
Huge fan of him. I mean, his rookie year, I went and seen him during the off-season tryout camps and stuff, and I was just like, hokey smokes, this dude is massive.
Mm-hmm.
And then whenever you sit there and you watch him, and the biggest thing that I'm excited about with Grover is look at the leap that he made last year. He steadily progressed, but man, when him and DeForest got in there beside one another, he just made, he went from more of a eat up blocks guy to, hey, let me get some pressure on the quarterback. Let me eat up these blocks, but I'm also going to get pressure on the quarterback. So yeah, I agree completely. He's solid also.
Lucas?
Whew, well, Grover Stewart, he, as Loyalist said, has massively improved this past year. Before, he was always a pretty solid defensive tackle, like a little bit limited in snaps, but very, very solid in the run defense. And this year, he just took off on a whole new level on that front. And him and Buckner became one of the best run stopping duos in the interior that Colts fans have seen in a long, long time. Like, I think you have to go back to the Baltimore days to really see a defensive tackle pairing that can really wreck this run attacks. So he's definitely going to be on the roster, of course. I think he still is, of course, a little bit more limited on the pass rush sets and can be switched out for more faster and more polished pass rushers. But he still will have a giant role for the team, both literally and, literally size-wise. But he's just going to be a great, great asset for the Colts, especially when we're going up against Derrick Henry in our own division. He is very, very needed.
Yeah, absolutely. I've already stated my thoughts on Grover Stewart. I'm a huge fan. I think he's one of the most underrated defensive linemen in football currently. Yes, he's not the guy that you want on the field when it's 3rd and 12, but most guys over 300 pounds aren't the guy you want, and he's like a 330 kind of guy. Actually, I think he lost some weight at the beginning of last offseason in order to make him a little bit quicker. So
it worked.
Yeah, it definitely worked. I already talked about him, our first round pick. 21st overall, Kwity Paye. I could have been a slightly happier. I understand some of you guys, like Lucas here, has a little bit of thought processes on Phillips. He was my number 1, but Paye was my number 2, and they were very, very close. Paye's a stud, and he's healthy. He's a little raw, but we got guys out there that teaches pass rush moves literally for a living right now. Ex-Colts, right? I don't know if you guys know this, but some dude that used to wear 98 for the Indianapolis Colts, he kind of sits there and teaches pass rush moves, and I think Kwity Paye might benefit from this. I see him as the starting defensive end. Actually, I see him as DE1 beside DeForest Buckner. Currently, he's on the roster on the depth chart on the other side of Stewart, though, as the strong side. Kind of odd. But he's a big dude, so who knows? Your thoughts, Lucas, on Kwity Paye?
Well, like you said earlier, I do have some thoughts between him versus Jalen Phillips. On tape and production-wise, Phillips was the better prospect. I will not dispute that. However, he was my DN2 solely because I am very, very terrified about his injury history. Like, he medically retired from football because of his injuries, and it was concussions. And you can get better from a concussion, but you can't rehab it, and it's always going to flare up, especially with the game of football. So I love Jalen Phillips, but I am very concerned about his long-term health. So Kwity Paye was my number 1 guy and the safest kind of pick I could say for defensive end that actually fit the Colts scheme. So I absolutely love the Kwity Paye pick. As far as where he's going to line up, it's a little bit questionable. I do see him more in that Justin Houston role, but if they want to put him on the strong side, the Colts coaches know more than me on that front, but he's definitely going to learn a lot from Robert Mathis. Mathis has been teaching the Colts pass rushers for a little bit now. His prize pupil so far has been Kamoko Toure, but he might have some competition for that. So I think it's going to be interesting to see his development. My expectations are he's not going to quite have the same amount of production as, for example, Justin Houston last year, but he can get pretty close, especially in the run game. He will he's more developed in the run than in the pass. So I don't know if he's going to quite get to that 8 sack level that Houston had last year, and definitely is not going to get those 2 safeties. I'm not betting on that one, but Yeah, he's definitely going to be a very big impact for year one and especially beyond.
Loyalist, your thoughts on pay?
First off, I don't know if you remember, but draft night, I was happy I actually got a pick right in the draft. I was like, hey, I had got one right since Q.
You
But
earned me $50 is what you did.
but I am cautiously excited, I guess. I hate putting so much into a rookie. And I think Ballard, Reich, they both, I like how they approach rookies. No matter how much hype they have or whatever, they still, they don't put them on the pedestal like you see some of these other picks go. So I do like how they're keeping them humble, which I think pay just from his story and everything about him. And when I heard his story and stuff, I was like, okay, this is the Ballard guy, in reference to whether it was going to be him or, guy from Miami. I was like, okay, yeah. I felt like it was paid solely just the skills and stuff. I understand that Quiddy didn't have quite as much talent, but then you add that character and just everything about the way he handles himself and stuff. I was like, yeah, if Colts could get this guy, Ballard's going to be smiling that night.
Absolutely. Before I get on, I want to give a shout out to the guys that are actually watching this stream and in the chat currently right now. Don't forget, smash that like button, hit subscribe if you're not subscribed. Shout out to Beetlejuice. Loyalist is in here as well. What? Multitasking, my guy. Multitasking. Alex Castillo, Chuck Millsap, Pump 35, Nano 505, Ant Rogers. I already mentioned Brandon Ace was in here. Chris Troger, what's going on? Daryl Ingram. What's going on, my guy? Let's see. Got any other people in here that I haven't named off yet? Dabney's in here. Psychological. Yes, there's a lot of people in here. That's awesome. I love the fact. We will get to the chat after we get done with our discussion. But after those guys that we just talked about, it starts to get a little bit thinner on whether they could make the roster or not. I already said I think Isaac Rochelle, because they gave him, he was a quick signing, and the fact that it wasn't like a really, really like league minimum signing, I think his spot is fairly safe. Go ahead, Loyalist. Do you think that Isaac Rochelle makes this 53 roster?
Yes. I mean, I'm trying to think, and I'm like, man, I'm not sure. Because honestly, like you said, after you start talking those three guys, the competition, I think, is just going to. I don't even know if Ballard knows right now. I really do believe that this competition isn't just lip service per se. I really believe that a lot of decisions will be made in this camp this year.
Lucas?
I feel like he's a pretty good shot to make this Colts 53-man roster. As you said, they gave him a little bit more than vet minimum. He has a decent amount of positional flexibility. I feel like he can possibly go a little bit more inside, occasionally go outside. Strong run defender. If anything, the guy who needs to be the most concerned about losing their job to Rochelle would be Al-Quadin Muhammad. I see they have very, very similar type of styles and like roles that could clash a little bit, but they might keep both, which I'll talk about later if they do keep both. But yeah, I'm thinking Rochelle's going to stay on the roster.
The next guy I feel like has the safest spot on the roster is Tyquan Lewis. I feel like it was a little bit questionable his rookie year, second round pick. But last year, he seemed to have picked it up, in my opinion. He seemed to show a lot more flexibility. He was on the field more often, which showed, in my opinion, that he got Matt Eberflus to like him a little bit more, which always helps when your defensive coordinator, your boss, is really happy with you. I feel like he improved quite a bit last year, got some pressures, got a couple sacks. I think Tyquan Lewis is next on this list to make this squad. If he can make a jump this year as big as he did last year, it could mean big things for him in the future with the Indianapolis Colts. Lucas, what are your thoughts on Tyquan Lewis?
I am a big fan of the Tyquan Lewis breakout possibility this year. If anything, I have him projected as one of the starters for the Colts week 1. I think his positional flexibility is, of course, amazing. He can line up in the 3 technique. He can also line up at defensive end. Great athlete, and he's been developing more and more over the years in terms of his pass rushing ability, and his first step is just lightning quick, I've seen. So if he can show this year that it's all on the line right now, if he can show that he has developed to the point where he can be a reliable pass rusher for this Colts team, then he will be one of the priority re-signings in this offseason. So I feel very highly about Tyquan Lewis this year. He's finally going to get those starting snaps. He'll have a lot of usage. He had 16 pressures last year as a reserve and kind of spot starter at times, depending on injuries. So I'm feeling pretty confident about his ability to step up, as long as he stays healthy, of course.
Okay. Loyalist, thoughts on Tyquan Lewis?
I couldn't agree more. I'm like Lucas as far as whenever it comes to the Al-Qadim Muhammad and, we just talked about Rochelle, thank you. I do feel like them two are going to – so I feel like Tyquan is probably more secure than either of those two guys. But I just think last year it seemed like Ballard says sometimes it takes these guys 2 or 3 years to get it. And I just felt like last year, listening to the interviews, watching them on the field and stuff, I just really felt like Tyquan was locking it in. He was maturing mentally. He always had the physical gifts. Coming out of college, he was a beast. I just think that it took him a year or two to get the mental part of being a pro and stuff. And I really felt like last year he started turning that corner. And like Lucas says, God willing, if he stays healthy, I think he's going to be one of the main reasons that our defensive line stays or gets better.
Next up on my list of guys who I think will probably make the list, but it's not guaranteed, is a fan favorite, Kemoko Turay, number 57, defensive end pass rush specialist, who, as Lucas said earlier, has been working with Robert Mathis the last couple years. Turay had a 5-game stint in 2019 before he busted his ankle, where he was one of the better pass rushers in the NFL. And, it took him a while to get to that point, and it got a lot of people excited. And then at the end of the Kansas City game, the worst thing possible darn near could happen, and it did. And he came back last year. He had a couple surgeries on it. He had an infection in it. Everything bad that could happen to Kemoko happened to Kemoko. He finally was able to come back late in the year last year, but just didn't look like the same guy. I don't know if he still has the same burst he used to have. And as a pass rush specialist, give me a second. Oh, that's my alarm that says I need to go live.
Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished. If he doesn't have the same burst that he had before the ankle injury, I have a bad feeling. I wish Kemoko the best. I hope he comes back 100% after that injury. I hope he shows out this offseason and preseason to make the team because, as I said, not only is he a fan favorite, he's one of my favorites, and I hope he succeeds. But his time frame is shrinking very, very fast, in my opinion. Loyalist, your thoughts on Kemoko Turay?
As we said, I'm a fan, so he's definitely one of the guys that I'm rooting for and pulling for. And I was surprised. I'm not a doctor. I don't pretend to play one on TV, but I was surprised to see that they were pushing him out when they did last year. Okay. Then Ballard comes back at the end of the year and says, maybe we ran that too soon, whatever. The thing for me, for the injury that he had and the type of player, that explosion and stuff, that's where I'm just like, I would love to say yes and hype it and you know what I mean. But man, that injury and what his job is, that's just I don't know. I really don't know. I hope, but I don't know.
Lucas?
Toure. He's a fan favorite. He's a fan favorite of mine as well. You talked about that 5-game stretch in the beginning of the 2019 season where, especially in the Kansas City game, which was his final game of that year, he was absolutely a game wrecker. He was getting on Patrick Mahomes so often. Oh my gosh. It was a phenomenal performance.
He was getting held all the time too in that game. It was all. I was like, "What?"
Like on that field with him, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, Darius Leonard, and Kenny Moore. He was the biggest impact guy of that game, and that was insane.
Mm-hmm.
But sadly, that's also the game that he got his injury. He hasn't looked the same explosiveness last year, and it's unclear if he will get that explosiveness again. He doesn't give enough in terms of run defense help that you can really justify if he doesn't have that explosiveness, that it can be tougher to justify putting him on this Colts roster. I think he's got the upside. I would project at this point that he might get a little bit more explosive, maybe not fully to that point that he was before, but maybe just enough where the Colts are like, okay, maybe he regains more of it as the season goes on and they keep him on the roster just in case. Because out of all these defensive ends that the Colts have outside of really Kwity Paye, he's got one of the highest upsides of any of them. But it's just he has had some rotten luck, and I'm hopeful for the best. I don't know if I'd be putting any money on Toure being the one who breaks out this year, but hopefully he can. But we'll see what happens.
All right, before I move on, please don't forget smash that like button, hit subscribe if you're not subscribed, and tag that notification bell if you haven't already. Don't forget there's a share button here, and if you have a social media like Twitter, Facebook, some kind of Colts, I don't know, blog that you like to list on, feel free to share it because it's people like you that help me get my word out and my content out to other people. Thank you so much. The next group I want to talk about isn't necessarily a single individual person. It's 3 people together. And that's going to be because I feel like all 3 of these guys are fighting for one spot on the roster because I do not expect them to hold 3 backup nose tackles. All right. I really don't. And all 3 of these guys are fighting for that one spot, in my opinion. Now, you guys might feel the same or might have a different opinion. First off, how many nose tackles do each of you think that the Colts will probably hold on to this year? Either
2.
you feel 2. You got okay. So you got Stewart and then his backup.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Lucas.
I agree. 2.
And there are 3
Maybe
people.
Stewart and his backup, but
yeah.
I already have a good idea on who that backup will be. If you want me to say who that one will be right now, I can.
Well, I'm going to name
off. Or shall we build suspense?
We're gonna build suspense because I'm going to name off all 3 of these guys who are fighting for that. That's Antwaun Woods, Andrew Brown, and Taylor Stallworth. Now, a lot of you know who Taylor Stallworth is. He played last year, came in from San Francisco. Antwaun Woods, also came in this offseason, signing. A lot of people liked him. I'm not as big a fan as Antwaun Woods as a lot of other people are, but, that's why opinions are opinions. And then Andrew Brown came in from Houston. My personal opinion of those 3, I think Stallworth wins this battle. Only because I feel like Stallworth is more sound in his hand placement and his technique. Now, Antwaun Woods is a big dude and is strong. And I have seen too many times from the film over the last few years on his film that I looked over where he is pushed or physically moves out of his spot. And when you're a nose tackle, you do not want to move out of your spot because your primary objective is to stuff that run. And if you're not in your spot, then that's a really bad situation. And Andrew Brown, I think, just was brought in for just competition, and I don't think he has much of a chance of making the roster overall. Lucas, since you said that you had your opinion, go ahead, man.
Well, after that intro, you'll be surprised to hear that it's Antwaun Woods as the projected backup, in my opinion, for the Colts behind Grover Stewart. I agree. His recent tape, especially 2019 and 2020, was not good. No arguments here. That he did show that he was just moving around all of the time and not exactly ideal for a nose tackle. For your whole entire job is to stay in your spot, plug up the space, and make sure that, hey, you're not going through the A gap and probably a little bit of the B gap.
Mm-hmm.
So, but he does have amazing strength, as you said, and I feel like Eberflus is going to be very confident in his ability to kind of coach him out of that, because is it a little bit of a technique issue? Yeah, but he does have the natural ability, I believe, to fill in that role. And the Colts clearly did identify that as a need after the draft, where they were not feeling confident in their defensive tackles. They brought in a guy who had starting experience, at least on the Cowboys front. And the Cowboys have a kind of similar scheme to the Colts, as Eberflus came from the Cowboys, and they had a few Marinelli disciples there as well. So I think it's going to be interesting to see who makes it, but at this point, my bet is Antwaun Woods.
Loyalist, your thoughts?
I'm leaning towards more of the Stallworth camp because, quite honestly, that's who I know better. You know, the Antwaun Wood, and I just don't know enough. But what we saw from Stallworth last year, he just really seemed to fit. And when there were certain times where you could see him pop on the screen and stuff, and you were like, okay, I can see this happen.
Okay. Real quick, I'm going to jump in. Richard Charles talking about nose tackles are 3-4 0 tech. They're also the 1 tech in a 4-3 defense. They're considered your traditional defensive tackle, but it's basically your nose tackle. In a 3-4, you're still got 4 guys coming. It's just which outside linebacker. On a 4-3, you know what 4 generally are coming, and your nose tackle is that guy that sits in that 1 or 0 spot. So that's why I'm calling it the nose tackle position. But yeah, your A or B gap. Hey, it could be Antwaun. You could be right, Lucas. It happens. I'm not right 100% of the time. That's why I've got you on here, right?
Yeah, we're allowed to have disagreements,
Exactly.
It's not going to be like, hey, I'm not coming on your show because you didn't agree with me on Antwaun Woods. How dare you, Lost?
Right. What are you guys gonna do when it's neither of them?
Right? What if my boy from Houston makes it? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, if it's Andrew Brown, then we're all just upset. One's
everybody's upset over that one. I want to bring up Dio Odangbo. Took me a minute to realize how to pronounce his name, but I finally got it right. Even though it's pronounced or spelled one way, it's pronounced another. It is Odangbo. Dio Odangbo. I do want to bring him up because he is going to make the roster. The only problem is if it's PUP or IR, because he did. I don't expect him being ready week 1 or even close to week 1 like maybe Eric Fisher, even though they have the same injury. Surgeons and technique of the surgery, it makes a huge deal. And with Eric Fisher being a high-profile person, he got the best of the best treatment. I'm not 100% sure if Dio did. So I'm gonna put him off. He probably is not going to make the 53 just because he'll either be on PUP or IR, but I still expect him sometime during the season to definitely take someone's spot on the 53-man roster when he comes back, hopefully by mid-season. Let's go with Loyalist first. What's your thought on Dio?
I'm so excited. I just think that for me, he's like a Christmas present that you bought, but you don't get to open it until next year or something. It's like, because I don't know if Ballard is thinking this way, but is it possible that he just puts them on IR for the year, knowing that it takes these guys time to mentally develop into the role and stuff, and the depth being as strong as it is, does he just take, and say, which I know, you want to get the guy out there, you want to get reps. I just don't know where that balances out as far as in Ballard's mind.
You could be right, or he could be coming on and put on a very closely watched snap count, right? Maybe 10 snaps a game when he's able to come in, just to give him a feel of the NFL while it's happening. Or, like you said, he could be redshirted for the entire year. Lucas, your thoughts on Dio?
Dio, I had on draft night, I had him as a round 3 grade just because, as I said before with Jalen Phillips, I am very injury risk adversive in the early rounds. So the Achilles injury, and especially it being that late in the year, it scared me. But injury aside, he would have been a late first, early second round guy on my board. Hurricane Dio is what he's been called by the Colts scouting department, which I definitely see that. The guy is an absolute game wrecker. It seemed like every single snap they were trying to put 2 or 3 guys on him because the Vanderbilt defense just did not have any other threats, and he was still making it happen. And I really, really like him as a player. However, for the Colts, he's gonna have to, wait. We'll see how long it will be, and if they really want to kind of ease him into it. They sounds like they're gonna exercise patience, but we'll see if it might be a kind of similar to what happened with Tyquan Lewis's rookie year, where he got injured early on and then just sat out for the first 8 weeks or so, and then came back in the second half and surprisingly did really well considering his injury. So we'll see what happens. Just don't expect a Jeffrey Simmons rookie year type deal, but 2022 will be very, very fun to see what he can do.
Next guy on the list that I think makes the 53-man roster, but a lot of people would look at it and go, probably not. I think he does just because of his special teams ability, is Robert Windsor. Is he going to be someone that's going to come out and be a huge person on actual defensive snaps? No, but he does get special team snaps, and the Colts have shown that special teams is very, very important to them. I can't name how many times games have flipped on a nail's head because special teams did it, right? Whether they were losing or whether they were ahead and they just blew it open, something of that nature. Special teams always played a big part, and I feel that Robert Windsor's ability in the special teams will help him stay on the 53. However, some of these other guys, if they could show that they have special teams ability as well, could possibly take him, because I don't think Robert Windsor is in all honesty, a quality backup on the D-line, even though he's considered, a tackle. What are your thoughts, Lucas, on Robert Windsor?
Personally, I have him kind of projected more as a practice squad guy, but during the Dio absence, as I will say, he is going to have at least a decent shot to make the roster because of that special teams ability, like you said, because, hey, someone on the roster has to play special teams. People don't want to admit that with the back of the roster. They want to have all the high upside guys, everyone who they think, oh, maybe if he develops, he becomes a great guy. But no, they have to have someone play special teams, and Robert Windsor will be that someone, at least for that early part of the season, where I think he's going to be on the active roster. Once Dio comes back, I don't know. I think he gets probably demoted back to practice squad. It just depends really on how the Colts are at that point with other injuries as well along the D-line, but don't have much expectations for him in terms of, I don't think he's going to become the next sack king for the Colts or anything. but
me neither.
watch it happen just so I'm wrong. Universe decides.
Make me eat crow, Robert. Make me eat crow. Loyalist, your thoughts on Robert Windsor?
I agree completely. I believe that he's one of those guys, special teams first. Then if we can find a way to get him some reps in practice and stuff, but definitely special teams, I think, is more where his lane is.
Okay. Now, a lot of people are probably really ticked off at me right now because I have purposely not talked about these two guys that have been on the Colts squad for a couple years now. And yet I haven't talked about them. That's Al-Qadim Muhammad and Ben Banigou. I've done that on purpose because I think those two guys are fighting for a backup spot. And one, if not both, may not make the team at the end of the year. Ben Banigou, the reasoning for Ben Banigou, I believe, is he was healthy scratches multiple times, all right, over the last couple years because of his lack of effort during practice. That is the news that came out of the Colts camp, was that he just too much loafs. And we know how the Colts feel about people who don't put in 100% during practice. You're not playing. Now, could Ben have flipped that and became, a guy who's doing that a lot and practicing hard? Sure. But we've seen guys still on their rookie contracts get cut because of that specific thing, right? On the team that were second, third round picks. And Ben Banigou was a second round pick. I have a feeling that he's in right there on that edge. He may or may not make this team, and I think it's a 50-50 shot that he doesn't make the team. And currently right now, I don't think I'm going to put him as a no just because of that specific thing. And I know a lot of Colts fans out there like Ben Banigou and hope that he becomes somebody. But everything I just said is the reason why I don't think that he makes the team. Lucas, what are your thoughts on Ben Banigou?
Well, in that article that I mentioned earlier, I do not have him on the active roster, but I do have him demoted to the practice squad, where I think that might serve as a possible wake-up call for him to say, hey, you need to get your act together in practice. You need to be putting it 100% in, not just on game days, because you won't be getting a chance on game days if you aren't doing it in practice. I mean, it scares me because this is looking a little bit similar to that Quincy Wilson situation that developed a few years back, which you were alluding to. I mean, he was also a second-round pick, but at least Quincy Wilson had significant snaps. Like, he was a good role player for the Colts in terms of how much of playing time he got, and then all of a sudden he's not practicing well and he is in hot water and then gets cut the next year, and now he's trying to say that he's covering people instead of covering grass now, and guess what, he's not doing either. At least not very well. But sorry, Quincy, I have to throw a little jab in, but Banigou, he is in that danger as well. I mean, there was also a press conference recently where Chris Ballard was talking about every single defensive lineman, but the one guy he did not bring up was Ben Banigou. And that tells me that he's in hot water, not just with the coaching staff, but with the front office. And he was one of Ballard's guys. He was who Ballard decided to draft. So if he's losing confidence there, he might not just be like demoted to practice squad. He could also be cut. But we'll see what happens.
Loyalist, thoughts on Ben Banigou?
Well, I agree with a lot of what Lucas said. I feel like, putting him on practice squad as a warning shot, I just don't see Ballard doing it. I feel like the warning shot was last year. The warning shot was all the, scratches, but not being, like I said, these spots are now with our Colts roster being so deep and stuff. I just feel like every one of these spots are coveted in Ballard's mind, like I said, I hope that he comes out and has a Grover Stewart advancement. I love his length. I love a lot of other things he brings to the table physically, but I just don't see it. I mean, whenever you got a year and a half, 2 years of, being told, hey, do more, do more, do more. I mean, after a while, I feel like Ballard's just gonna be like, we talked, we had it, it didn't work, and move on.
So I will go to a comment. I haven't done that much, and I promise to do it later. But this comment makes a lot of sense right here. Brock Glazer says, when Ballard said they have taken chances on guys without the best character and they'll never do it again because they don't work out, I immediately thought of Banagoo. Wow, that makes a lot of sense. Next guy on the list is Al-Qadim Muhammad, and I'll tell you what, he is a guy that shows potential in my eyes. There is times when I have watched Al-Qadim Muhammad and he explodes off the line. He looks like he's juiced, like he's got his batteries plugged into the wall and he's ready to go and let it get out. And then other times it looks like he completely disappears and he's completely locked down by one of the weakest offensive linemen in football, And it's that inconsistency that worries me about Al-Qadim Muhammad. But I have watched him when he has that juice and that come off the line thing. I've seen him wreck a game in very important parts of the game. When it comes to, I get it. He's not the best pass rusher, but when he does come off of it, boy, he's scary. And then other times, he's generally a run-stopping defensive end. This is a guy I feel like is right on that edge. They did not. I mean, they gave him a tender rather than signing him. So that, in my opinion, says a lot about where they feel about Muhammad. And again, it's a guy I think makes the roster, but it's on the back end. He's the guy I feel like could lose his job to Dio when he comes back, in my opinion. Loyalist?
I like Al-Qadim Muhammad. I'm a bigger fan than a lot of people of him. Like I said, I think he has the potential to really come in and help fill that run-stopping void that we're going to lose a little bit with Justin Houston leaving and or not being re-signed and stuff. There again, his length, and then you put him alongside Grover and DeForest, and it's like, we got 3/4 of the field covered, you know what I mean? Just with the length alone, it seems like. So yeah, I do. And like you said, man, when he pops, I mean, I forget what the game was. It was 2 years ago, but I mean, one of the sacks that he came in, he just sort of lucked into, but it was all hustle. And I mean, man, when he's really got his game going and stuff, he just, to me, has a lot of upside, I think.
Lucas.
Well, I stated before, I think that he's going to be competing with Rochelle a little bit with their roles being kind of similar. I think both of them will be competing for that early down role as one of the primary run stoppers, along with Kwity Paye on the outside, on the other side. So that way we have those two plus DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart in the middle, just to really focus in on those obvious rundowns, and then they swap it out for like Taekwon Lewis and maybe even, if he's developed at that point, Kamoko Toure. But and maybe even later on, Dio. Dio is going to be a big factor in him later on in the year. They do have very similar type of length and explosiveness off the line. He's got some upside, but like you said, his inconsistency is very, very frustrated. Some games he can be absolutely amazing. Other games you're like, why is he in this game? Like, just sub him out, please. But the coaching staff seems to really, really like him, and I think he's gonna I think he's going to be a pretty decent bet to make the roster, in my opinion.
Okay. The last two guys that's on the list, I'm going to be frank and honest with you guys. I don't know much about Chris Williams and Cameron Klein. There's not really tape on them, at least NFL level wise. So I can't really give much of an opinion on them. I think if they make the team, it'll be because they seriously showed out in preseason and in training camp, and that they show an ability to play special teams more so than Robert Windsor. And that's the only way I feel like these guys would probably make the team. But like I said, I don't know much about these guys. So do either of you, we'll start with Loyalist, do you know much about these guys at all?
No, sir. You sent out the alert today that, hey, we're getting together. Would you like to be here? First thing I did was started going through, and I'm like, okay. And I started trying to find stuff on these guys, and it was like, okay, I'm just going to hope you don't ask me any questions.
Hey, to say you don't know is better than making stuff up and acting like you know something you don't know. So that is a big plus on your end. Lucas.
I'm going to be honest as well. I do not know much on these guys. They are fringe roster guys with hard to kind of get some research on them. There's not a whole lot written on them. Chris Williams, at least, he was from a smaller school, I believe. So even then, it makes it even harder. So there's a lot of challenges to really on projecting them. They could surprise potentially and show out as like certain other Colts have in the past and come out of nowhere and roll on the team. But at this point, they are complete unknowns, and I don't feel confident in projecting them onto the roster at this point.
All right. So now that we are at this point, we have went through every name on the current roster that is a defensive lineman. I'm going to name off the guys that I feel will make the 53. I'm not going by practice squad. You're welcome to add your practice squad guys, obviously, since you wrote the article. But I'm not going by practice squad. In my opinion, practice squad is guys that have potential but wasn't able to make the 53. I'm sure there will be a guy or two that does make it, but I've got Tyquan Lewis, DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, Kwity Paye. I have Robert Windsor, Isaac Rochelle. I have Taylor Stallworth. I'm not going to list Dio because he's going to be, as I said earlier, I do believe Kimoko Toure makes the roster. That last guy is going to be interesting, right? I think Muhammad could, but he may not. I think it's a shot between Ben and Muhammad on who makes the team at that point. And I'm not comfortable enough yet, but I feel one of those two guys will probably make it. And that's my list. I got him keeping 9. And the only reason I got him keeping 9 is because I feel like they're going to need more in the secondary than what they normally do because of specific role players between playing zone and playing man. They have certain players that do not play zone very well and other players that don't play man very well, and they're going to want those as rotational pieces, in my opinion, which is why I think that extra person will be at the cornerback position rather than the defensive line. Let's go to Lucas. Since you already got it down, you got your list right in front of you, I'm sure. Why don't you go ahead and give your thoughts on who makes this 53?
All right. Well, I have 9 guys as well. A little bit of a difference than your 9, but of course, to everyone's shock, DeForest Buckner makes it, as does Kwity Paye. I know, hot take alert. You got Tyquan, you got Kimoko Toure. I have both Al-Quadin Muhammad and Isaac Rochelle both making the roster. Grover Stewart makes it. Antoine Woods. That's the big difference between you and me, between him and Stallworth. And I have Windsor making it in the interim, but then Dio, of course, coming into and pushing Windsor back into the practice squad.
Loyalist.
I agree. Like I said earlier, I think Banagoo, I think he's definitely outside looking in. I think as far as Rochelle, Banagoo, and Muhammad, I feel like he's the one that's got some catching up to do. You know what I mean? But like I said, I could see any of those three being interchangeable as far as who does or doesn't make it.
Okay. All right. I'm going to get to the live chat now, finally. Yay! For all you viewers that's been sitting here in the live chat. I haven't really talked to many people out here. Let's see what's going on. Nano says, "What's up, Lawrence? I'm glad to know that Chuck Millsap let us know that the audio was working fine. That's a big deal. Because no one wants to be on here and just be like, what's he saying? I don't read lips." I love the historic Colts logo, Aunt Roger says. "I feel like it pays homage to the past Colts." Yes, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's my boy's hat sitting over there in the middle of us. Good hat there. Brandon says he thinks that the Colts defense will take a huge step back because the Colts are relying on rookies to help out with the pass rush. My opinion is I think they'll actually do better this year because they're going with younger, faster, more explosive guys rather than 30-plus-year-old defensive ends on the starting edge. Loyalist, what are your thoughts on the pass rush ability on this?
Yeah, I'm sold on the juice. You know, I mean, I really do think that the hunger and just these guys trying to come in and make their name, or whether it's guys that have been here for a couple years and they're like, hey, my window's shrinking if I don't get in gear. I just think that the competition and, like you said, the youth and stuff, not knocking, Justin Houston at all. But I do think that we are going to be able to maybe even do better. I think our low point will be even.
Okay. Lucas, your thoughts?
I think this pass rush is going to be slightly better. I'm not going to be projecting them going crazier better, but I think I agree. It's going to be more quick, more explosive, a lot more juice off of the edge. However, you're going to get a little bit more inconsistency from some of these younger guys, though I do believe in the Tyquan Lewis breakout, especially. If I had to bet on any one of these younger guys to break out, that's where my money's going to be. But it's going to be interesting to see if I'm going to see the biggest improvement outside of Tyquan Lewis. I think that DeForest Buckner could actually have an even bigger step forward this year in his second year in the Colts system. And he was already a first-team All-Pro last year. If he gets even better with more experience with this team and more familiarity with his teammates, whoo!
Yeah.
I mean, he might not be getting quite to that Aaron Donald level, but it will be a very, very scary time for Colts opponents in 2021.
JDW Sports Talk Show, thank you so much for joining and the Super Chat donation. He says, Colts family, how you all doing? How are we doing today as we discuss the defensive line? I think I'm doing great, personally. I'm getting ready. I've got a film room I'm actually going to drop tonight about a certain fourth-round pick that the Colts had. Loyalist, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. I appreciate you having me on here. I did want to say one thing, though. I think Turay, I know I'm fanboying or whatever, but when Lucas sat there and said, biggest jump and stuff, compared to last year now, I think if you compare what Turay brought to us last year, understandably not 100%, I think this year he has a chance to really, and if he does, like I said, if he does, man, the middle from the edges, where are they going to stop it? I'm just, like I said, I am really, really thinking that Teray, after, going through and having things cleaned up this last year and stuff, I think he's going to be a big chance for a massive leap to help lessen the loss of Houston and stuff.
Lucas, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really, really good. I can't complain. Very beautiful day outside, even though I'm not really looking at it, but it was a great day. And to your point, loyalist, on who's going to be stopping that, or like where could they stop the Colts defense if Teray breaks out like that? They won't. If he hits the ceiling, they won't be able to stop this Colts defense. That's the simple answer, unless they have an elite offensive line. And very few teams are going to have the offensive line capable of stopping this Colts defense if Kemoko Turay breaks out, and so does Tyquan Lewis potentially. It's going to be very, very scary. But, however, to my point earlier, I think Tyquan is more likely to break out, though Turay has the higher upside of the two, though both have phenomenal potential.
Yeah.
Now that we got through with that super chat, and Chris Troger says, getting a hoodie for my dad's day, but I like that Gorilla Cup. He's talking about my merch shop, which obviously you see over there on the other side of Lucas. Just the hoodie that's sitting there. You could go check out the link to my merch shop down below in the description below. You just got to expand it. Also in there is the link to a super chat, which is much better than the YouTube super chat. I'm just saying it is much, much better. I get more money out of it. YouTube, serious. When I say that, think about this. If you donate a $10 super chat, I get $4.50 out of it. That's it. YouTube takes the rest. Now, if you make a $10 super chat through that link down below, still comes up. We will definitely read it. Any super chats that come in, or whether it be a question, a comment, anything of that nature, we definitely will get to those. But if it's a $10 super chat through there, I'm getting $9 of that. So, huge difference, right? Huge difference. So I'm just asking you, if you want to use a super chat at all, please use the one in the link in the description. Let's get on to some more questions. Oh, Daryl Ingram says, what's going on? Hey, what's going on, Daryl? Appreciate you being here. Don't forget, I also have that Patreon, which I keep throwing these out there, but I am here. Right here is another shout out to all my patrons. And as you see, Colts Loyalist is among those. Yay, thank you so much. You can find all my stuff in there, whether it's right here on this show or on other places. And once I have 15, then I will do live streams specifically only for my patrons every other week. So, yay! All right, let's get into this. Ant Rogers says, I think Deo could play the 3-tech or edge, but the 3-tech until he gets some better moves and bend. The only issue with 3-tech is he will be dealing with centers and guards rather than tackle, in my opinion, and that's a lot more weight on that injury to his Achilles. I would expect him to play edge more than I would expect him to play 3-tech at that point, at least until he starts to heal up even more so. Lucas, what are your thoughts?
I agree. He'll probably stick a little bit more to the edge where he will have an easier time, both physically and, just production-wise. Long-term, though, he will have amazing positional flexibility and versatility. It's going to be very interesting to see how they dial him up later on. Frank Reich said it best that he can play almost any single position on that defensive line. And imagining him as the pass rushing 1-tech would be very, very fun on passing downs. So we'll see where he is, but I like him at edge, at least for right now in 2021.
Okay. Loyalist?
More of the same. I
Okay.
know. Sorry.
You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. So I'm looking here currently, and there was an interesting comment that says Chris Troger says we will have more sacks this year than we had last year. Last year, the Indianapolis Colts had 40 sacks on the season. Loyalist, what's your prediction on sack totals now that you see what the defense kind of looks like a little bit? Do you think they will have more or less than 40 sacks this upcoming 2021 season?
I think we'll have more sacks from the line this year because, like I said, I just don't think that we're going to need to be drawing as many blitzes and stuff, which I know we don't do a lot of anyhow. But I do agree that I think that, like Bucky Brooks, I was listening to him, and he's predicted, pay to get anywhere from 8 to 10 in his rookie year. If that happens, hello, I mean, I would be amazing. But I'm more of the 5 to 6. I'm hoping this year. I'd be ecstatic with that. But like I said, I do think our line is going to get more sacks for the line.
Lucas, what do you think? 40, is that over or under 40 for this year total for the Colts?
Well, I think they are going to be over that a little bit, possibly get to around like 41, 42. It's going to be very, very close. But I actually think that the defensive line is going to have less sacks than it will have next year, and they might actually blitz it up a little bit even more just to supplement with some of those younger guys trying to develop, at least early on. Eberflus is known to kind of change it up at times. Like, he has occasionally gone more man-heavy and blitz it up a lot, which doesn't happen on like great long stretches, but he hasn't been afraid to do it at times. And I think if he feels like the Colts edge rushes kind of need to have some more time to really get their groove, he might start dialing up some more Kenny Moore blitzes from the nickel. He might be dialing up a little bit more of Darius Leonard, who was very, very efficient as a blitzer throughout his 3 years, and especially his rookie year when he had a sack every 4 blitzes, which was insane. So I think he is going to try and go a little bit more aggressive this year on that front. And so I think that there will be an increase in off-ball sacks rather than defensive line sacks, though it's going to be very close on the latter.
You saying that Eberflus is going to blitz more is a big take a hot take. I mean, since Eberflus has been, I get that he does it occasionally, but last year he was the second least blitzing defense in the NFL. The second least. All right. He averages now the 5th least over the last 3 seasons. So that's.
I'm not saying that he's going to be like the most blitz happy team like a Steelers defense or anything.
The Steelers,
I think,
the Ravens. Yeah.
Yeah. He's not going to be. No one's going to confuse him with those types of defenses. However, like you said, he was second least last year. Either he's going to. The only way he gets better is there's only one way he can go, is either up or maybe he goes all the way to the last, which could happen, but I just have a feeling that there could be a little bit of supplementation of the pass rush, at least early on, for some of these early games, especially with how difficult that early schedule can be. If he's not feeling confident about the defensive ends at that point, I could see him possibly going like, especially week 1 against the Seahawks, they have a terrible defensive line, and if they're not, or offensive line, and they're not getting it done somehow on the edge, he might just throw a few extra blitzes out to also, in a way, contain Russell Wilson's scrambles.
Do you think? Now, I'm sorry, but like in 2019, I think was Eberflus's heaviest year on calling out blitzes. So if you were to sit there and compare it to that, do you have an idea more or less than 2019?
I think it's going to be maybe slightly less than 2019. I think that's going to be close to it, but he's not going to be the most blitz happy guy, of course. But I think that early stretch will be very telling to see if he decides to go in that direction.
JDW says, I was going to join, but I forgot. I thought you had a membership. And no, I do not have a YouTube membership program yet. I am waiting. I've got some guys out there. I got feelers out trying to do some certain things to make a membership rewards program uh, more fair. For like having different stuff that you get for being a member, and I don't have that quite yet. And once I get that, then I will open up a membership reward system. So thanks for mentioning that. I will never get over drafting Ben Banigou when AJ Brown was available and we needed a wide receiver. Brock Glazer says. First off, by me, I was a huge AJ Brown fan. Huge. I was like, dude is exactly the same size, speed, everything. He is a matchup. Not literally. I thought he was going to be the best receiver of that draft class, and that's over a certain Seattle receiver, right? DK Metcalf. But now, of course, in my opinion, I'm not I'm not Chris Ballard, you know, so he knows what the team needs most importantly. But currently, right now, obviously, I think the AJ Brown over Ben Banigou is kind of a win, but we still have uh, we still have a year or so. We still have more time to find out if Ben Banigou can step up and be somebody. But currently, right now, yeah, AJ Brown over Ben Banigou without any question. Uh, what were your thoughts when the Colts selected Ben Banigou? We'll start with Loyalist.
Like I said, I always try to guess what the first pick for Ballard's going to be and stuff, and I was definitely leaning on the AJ Brown train. I was like, but I know that's not what Ballard does. He always works from the inside out. So I like I said, I wanted it, but I also knew what I probably, what probably would happen.
Lucas?
Yeah, I had AJ Brown as a round one wide receiver, and I was really high on him. I was thinking 49 was going to be either him or maybe go for an offensive lineman potentially, just for some uh, or just for some depth purposes on that front, because Ballard likes to throw a few kind of different takes on everything. But that was actually not like the most shocking pick for me in that draft. In fact, the most shocking one was Paris Campbell then later on, because while DK Metcalf was on the board still there, DK Metcalf actually wasn't the guy who I really wanted. I wanted Terry McLaurin, and I was like, all right, this is the pick. This is where we're going to get Ohio State wide receiver Terry McLaurin. And I got the first two parts right, Ohio State wide receiver. They just got the wrong one. And I was there on draft night in Nashville, and a lot of Titans fans got to see me not so happy.
I was okay with Paris over Terry. Now, I would have been okay with either one. I was not a fan of DK Metcalf. I looked at. I didn't think he could make cuts. You know, from his tape, I thought that his route running was awful. Yes, he was a big, strong dude and can run in a straight line, but that's not how you get open in the NFL. You know, you can only do so much being a burner. But I liked Paris Campbell, and it's still open between that debate of McLaurin and Paris Campbell. Paris Campbell's got to stay healthy first and foremost. In my opinion, I think if Paris Campbell stays healthy, he's a 1,000-yard receiver on this team because of yak yardage. He's just nasty with the ball in his hands. But he's got to stay healthy, you know. Let's go back over here to some of these questions because I was reading and completely blew up in my face. Brock Glazer says Kenny Moore and Darius Leonard's going to have some nice sack numbers for their positions. And Brock, that's going to play into Lucas. They are only going to get those sack numbers if Matt Eberflus draws up blitzes, right? And that's just how it's going to work. The only way they could do that, and I would not be surprised if you saw some safety blitzes happen occasionally with having a single high and bringing that other box safety down for a blitz. I see that happen quite a bit. Um, Psychological says he wanted DK for his Pats team. And instead, they got N'Keal Harry. Yeah, I'm so sad about N'Keal Harry for the because that he's just good lord, that was a bust in my opinion. Um,
The
I think
Patriots don't get any sympathy from me. I'm
I
sorry.
know, I know, I know, I know. Most Colts fans feel that way, but I don't hold hatred towards the Patriots. I'm not a Tom Brady lover at all, but Patriots is just Patriots to me. Um, let's see here. Okay, psychological says yeah, DK fell in the draft because experts knocked his route running, and I did too because I didn't see it. Uh,
I mean, so much for that is just all about like where you land in the draft. That has such a big impact on success. And of course, there can be random stuff, like for example with Paris, the injuries.
mm-hmm.
And DK just so happened to go to one of the best deep ball throwers in the NFL in Russell Wilson, and a team that's not afraid to go with a lot of vertical route concepts. So he went to a great fit, and it worked out well. But if he went to a very different team, like let's say he went to the Jaguars, we would not be talking about DK Metcalf in nearly the same way as we talk about him right now.
Oh yeah, definitely. Um, Terrence Cooper's got a question. Maybe crazy answer, but might I ask? Could it be possible Ben Banigou may play a little bit of a hybrid Sam linebacker role this season, along with playing the edge in certain situations? That is a position that I think he could actually play very well in. I think he's built properly for the Sam linebacker. He's a little bit bigger, but at the same time, for a 4-3, a Sam linebacker is only going to be out there during the traditional spots and generally during run, your obvious run situations. And he'll be an edge setter. And I think Ben Banigou is more of that traditional edge setting kind of guy. And if he's going to play Sam, I think he would fit that role well. But man, I don't think he's got the speed in that. If he's out there at Sam linebacker, he's not dropping back into coverage. All right, that's just all there is. He is definitely coming up to set an edge. Loyalist, what are your thoughts on maybe seeing Bing Banigou maybe this preseason and stuff? Maybe seeing him step back into a Sam linebacker role.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, when we drafted him, I thought that was the original plan. So I think just because, with the way the roster fell out and stuff, that plan got switched around or whatever. But I would like to see it because, like I said, when I remember Ballard's first post-draft conference, he was sitting there saying that, he saw him playing some Sam linebacker and stuff. So, and we really haven't seen anything, of that yet. So I'd be interested, just like I said, just to see if we can get those physical traits out on the field and generate something with it,
Mm-hmm. Your thoughts, Lucas?
Well, that definitely was that plan initially, and then I believe injuries happened, and he was kind of forced into a different role as the season went on, and he had a decent rookie year, but then last year, of course, was just the healthy scratch year. He cannot be dropping into coverage, of course, but that athleticism is very, very interesting for that run-stopping, edge-setting role as the Sam linebacker. And, of course, it's going to have to be on, like, obvious rundowns, if anything, and he's going to be trying to go on that outside. And TCU's defense, he was doing a lot of outside stuff, like mostly trying to, like, crash in through the line of scrimmage rather than go around, which is kind of interesting. Like, TCU's defense is a very weird type of one to scout from what I've seen. And that I think that's a big part of why he was so raw coming out. But he has amazing, amazing speed for a Sam linebacker or a defensive end, really, and great explosiveness. And if they decide to put him in that role, it would definitely increase his odds of making the roster. and might actually be what's best for him. But at the same time, going back and forth from various different roles could also stunt him even more so. But to be fair, he hasn't really done anything at this point to really say, oh, we have to keep him at D end. So I'd say move him at linebacker and see what happens.
Dabney Offerman has a question. Metcalf had 83 receptions, 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns in 2020. If he comes in here first game of the season and torches us, will any of us be surprised? I will, believe it or not, because in all actuality, I think he's a physical receiver. We have guys who play physical receivers well. We have guys that have issues with speed, and he is fast, but he's also a very physical guy who likes to get in and push and pull. That's Rock Ya-Sin's actual bread and butter, right? Is to push and pull, okay? Hand fighting. The only problem is if they don't hand fight back, then he gets called on it. But in my opinion, DK will fight back. He'll initiate it. And because he initiates, I think Rock will do well against him. Plus, obviously, we're going to have guys over the top to protect against that kind of speed. Generally, I think we do well against those kind of receivers. But DK's, I would not be overly surprised because he is one of those freak athletes that is not only big but also fast, and that's a rare combination. Loyalist, what's your thoughts on? Do you think DK could have a big game against us week 1?
I know. I just, like you said, I just think that we're going to be too physical. I'm not impressed with Seattle's offensive line. I think our defensive line is going to be able to get enough pressure on. Now, question is can we keep Russell in the pocket? Can we keep him from extending? And then, if we don't do that, then guess what? We're going to see DK Metcalf sit in the end zone a lot more than we want to.
Lucas?
Yeah, DK, he's going to be a threat more so in drawing penalties, potentially. Rock Ya-Sin, as we know, he is very, very grabby, and he's going to have a lot to grab onto with DK Metcalf. Personally, I would just put Xavier Rhodes on DK if I had to choose between the two. And then maybe have Kenny Moore kind of follow around with Tyler Lockett if Kenny Moore isn't doing a few nickel blitzes or kind of like a more shallow type of zone type look. Wilson's contain will be absolute paramount because once he starts rolling out, then the Colts can either be burned by his legs or he just takes a deep shot when they finally decide, hey, we need to actually focus on him. And then you lose the receivers in the zone. So it's going to be interesting to see, but that offensive line is very, very susceptible. And I have a feeling Russell Wilson is going to be very familiar with Buckner yet again.
Yeah. The only issue is the Colts don't rotate their cornerbacks to cover specific people. Like one cornerback sits on one side of the field, the other cornerback sits on the other side of the field. Whoever lines up with them lines up with them. You know, they don't follow guys around, and he takes that side. Even when they're playing man, he's on that one. Xavier's going to be on one side of the field. It makes it easier for them. I actually like it that way. It makes it more simple. Now, it makes it easier for an offense to kind of move your guys around to get better matchups. I get that. But at the same time, there's ways of protecting yourself on that as well by rolling over-the-top help with your safeties. So, I think Xavier would be a better matchup because Xavier's a big guy as well, and I think he knows how to play guys like DK. I mean, he's played against Julio Jones and locked Julio Jones down, right? Xavier's done that throughout his career, and he's also locked down Tyreek Hill when he played against him. So he can not only lock down the big 50-50 catch guys, but he can lock down guys that has a lot of speed as well. I like Xavier Rhodes against him. I just don't think that they're going to end up lining him up that way. I think you're right. He'll probably put him on Rock Ya-Sin, who does have the grabby issues. But like I said, they're both big physical guys. And if you see a lot of pulling and tugging between both the receiver and the corner, usually a flag doesn't get thrown. It's when it's one way or the other. That's when that flag gets thrown. And Rock seems to be the first one to initiate half the time, and that's why the flags are thrown all the stinking time. It's awful. I hope he learns from that.
Something else that could be a wild card in this situation is, I mean, I don't know. I mean, to me, Rock doesn't seem like he's got that starting spot on lockdown. Okay, you got T.J. Carey, we've got Marvell Tell. Now, see, I think he could be a wild card in that type of situation. I don't know. I don't know what the year off is going to, is he going to come back and not miss a beat? Is he going to come back and really spent that year, studying and improving? I have no idea. But if he could get out on that field, he could really change the whole DK Metcalf story, I think.
Yeah. T.J. Carey. T.J. Carey took over Rock Ya-Sin's starting role the last 2 games of the season. So, because of the polling thing, and then as you say, Marvell Tell took last year off with COVID, so we get to see whether he's lost a step or gained a step this training camp and preseason. Something that I'm actually one of those few things that I'm actually like zoned in on wanting to see when I go check it out, guys. We've been here an hour and a half. I've held these guys over more than a half an hour past what I expected it to happen, I'm sure. But I want a special shout out Colts loyalist Lucas Robbins. Thank both of you for joining today. It's been fun and enjoyable, and hopefully we could do this again sometime soon. Thanks, loyalist. You just started your Twitter account.
Right.
First time.
I don't have anything to plug right now. I'm still just figuring things out.
Yeah, he's just figuring stuff out. But expect to see more of loyalists with me. I'll probably have him on my show more often in the upcoming future. And Lucas, go ahead and plug yourself one more time before we get out of here.
Well, shameless plug again. My Twitter handle is @RobbinsLucas, 1B. Don't be putting an extra B in my Robbins name. It's not the right way. And you can check me out over at The Blue Stable. It's a great new blog that just got started in April, and a lot of very talented, fun writers, great group of guys. And I think you guys are going to be really impressed with what we've been doing over there as well.
All right. So I'm going to be jumping out of here. I want to thank everyone again, all of you that watched this. Please don't forget, smash that like button, hit subscribe if you're not subscribed, tag that notification bell. And until next time, I'm Lawrence Owen with Colts Loyalist and Lucas Robbins, and have a good one.